There is a workplace that has no walls, no guardrails, no roof. The floor is steel. It is 4.5 acres wide. It sits 60 feet above the ocean. Aircraft land on it at 150 miles per hour. Aircraft launch from it at 170. The exhaust temperature from the engines behind those aircraft exceeds 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The noise level reaches 140 decibels, louder than a gunshot, sustained for hours. One wrong step and you are in the ocean. One wrong turn and you are in the path of a jet. One moment of inattention and a cable carrying 50,000 pounds of tension snaps across the space where you are standing. The average age of the people who work here is 20 years old. This is the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, and it is the most dangerous workplace on Earth. A 15-year study conducted by the U.S. Navy documented 918 serious injuries and 43 fatalities among flight deck personnel. Those numbers do not include minor injuries. They do not include the close calls that happen every day and never make it into a report. Over 90% of those injuries were caused by human factors, not equipment failure, not weather, human error. A sailor who lost situational awareness for a fraction of a second, a crew member who stepped across a foul line at the wrong moment, a technician who failed to secure a tool that became a projectile in the jet blast. The flight deck operates on a system so precise and so coordinated that the Navy calls it a ballet. But it is a ballet performed at 140 decibels, where the dancers cannot hear each other, cannot speak to each other, and communicate entirely through hand signals and the colors of their clothing. Because on a carrier flight deck, you do not know a person's name. You do not know their rank. You know their jersey color. And that color tells you everything you need to know about what they do, where they should be, and whether they are a danger to you or you are a danger to them. 7 colors, 7 roles, 1 system. And if any single color fails to do its job, people die. Yellow jerseys direct aircraft. They are the conductors. Their hand signals control where every aircraft moves on the flight deck and in the hangar below. A yellow shirt points, and a 30,000-pound fighter jet follows. The responsibility is absolute. A wrong signal sends an aircraft into another aircraft, into a group of personnel, or off the edge of the deck. Green jerseys operate the catapults and the arresting gear. They are the ones who launch aircraft into the sky and catch them when they come back. They maintain the most mechanically violent systems on the ship. And a subset of the green jerseys, the hook runners, do a job so dangerous that it deserves its own discussion. Red jerseys handle ordnance, bombs, missiles, and ammunition. They load live weapons onto aircraft that are sitting on a deck surrounded by other aircraft, fuel lines, and hundreds of people. The margin for error is 0. Purple jerseys are called grapes. They handle aviation fuel. Every aircraft on the flight deck needs to be fueled before launch and defueled in certain conditions. The fuel is JP5, a kerosene-based liquid that is less volatile than gasoline but will absolutely burn, and on a carrier flight deck, it is everywhere. Blue jerseys handle aircraft movement on the deck, chalking, chaining, operating tractors and elevators. They are the ones who physically push and position multi-ton aircraft in spaces measured in inches. Brown jerseys are plane captains. Each one is assigned to a specific aircraft. They know that aircraft the way a mechanic knows a car they have maintained for years. They are responsible for its pre-flight condition. White jerseys are safety, medical, and quality assurance. They watch, they verify. They are the ones who intervene when something is about to go wrong. 7 colors, each one visible at a glance. Each one telling every other person on the deck exactly who you are and what you are doing. In an environment where verbal communication is impossible, the jersey system replaces language entirely. But there is one group within the green jerseys whose job is so specific and so dangerous that it defines what it means to work on the deadliest 4.5 acres on Earth. When a fighter jet lands on an aircraft carrier, it does not slow down and roll to a stop. It hits the deck at full military power. The engines are at maximum thrust at the moment of touchdown. Because if the tail hook misses the cable, if the aircraft bolters, the pilot needs enough power to immediately take off again. There is no runway to stop on. There is only the deck, the cable, or the ocean. The tailhook catches a cross-deck pendant, a steel cable approximately 1 7/16 inches in diameter, stretched across the landing area. That cable is connected to purchase below the deck from the resting engine, a hydraulic system that absorbs the aircraft's kinetic energy and brings it from 150 miles per hour to a complete stop in roughly 2 seconds over a distance of about 300 feet. The forces are extreme. A 54,000-pound aircraft, decelerating from landing speed to 0 in 2 seconds, produces G-forces that slam the pilot forward against the harness. The cable absorbs millions of foot-pounds of kinetic energy, and the cable has a finite life, approximately 125 arrestments before it must be replaced. This is where the hook runners work. After every arrested landing, the cross-deck pendant must be disengaged from the aircraft's tailhook and reset for the next landing. The hook runners, green-shirted sailors, sprint toward the aircraft, release the cable, and clear the landing area so the next aircraft can come aboard. In 2016, an arresting cable parted during a routine landing on the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. 8 sailors were injured. The cable snapped with enough force to throw equipment across the deck. This is not the only ritual on the flight deck that separates life from catastrophe. There is another one, quieter, slower, and in some ways, even more important. Before flight operations begin, something happens on the flight deck that looks almost absurd from a distance. Hundreds of sailors line up shoulder to shoulder across the full width of the deck. Officers, enlisted, every rate, every rank. They form a human line that stretches from one edge of the ship to the other, and then they walk. Slowly, together, eyes down, scanning every square inch of steel beneath their feet. This is the FOD walkdown, Foreign Object Damage Prevention. FOD is any loose object on the flight deck, a bolt, a washer, a piece of safety wire, a fragment of metal, a screw that fell out of a panel during maintenance the night before. Any of these objects, if ingested by a jet engine during launch or landing, can shatter compressor blades, destroy turbines, and cause catastrophic engine failure. A single bolt can kill a $70 million engine. And so, before every flight cycle, the crew walks, every person, shoulder to shoulder, picking up anything they find. A washer, a cotter pin, a zip tie. Everything goes into a collection bag, and every item is analyzed to determine where it came from. If a specific fastener is found, the maintenance logs are checked to trace which aircraft or system lost it. This is not optional. It is not delegated to a cleaning crew. It is performed by everyone because the message is deliberate. Every person on this deck is responsible for what is on this deck. Rank does not exempt you. Rate does not excuse you. The jet does not care who you are. If the debris is there when the engine starts, the engine fails. The FOD walkdown is the quietest moment on the flight deck. No engines, no shouting, just hundreds of people walking slowly, looking down, picking up the things that could kill them. And then the engines start, and the deck becomes the most violent workplace in the world again. July 29th, 1967. The aircraft carrier USS Forrestal was operating in the Gulf of Tonkin during the Vietnam War. The flight deck was crowded. Aircraft were fueled, armed, and positioned for a strike. At 10:53 in the morning, an electrical surge caused a Zuni rocket to fire from an A-4 Phantom. The rocket streaked across the deck and struck the external fuel tank of a nearby A-4 Skyhawk. Jet fuel poured across the deck and ignited. Within 90 seconds, bombs began to detonate. The initial explosions killed most of the first firefighting team. Without experienced damage control personnel, the fire spread below decks, igniting fuel stores and ammunition magazines. Secondary explosions blew holes in the flight deck large enough for aircraft to fall through. 134 sailors were killed. 161 were injured. 21 aircraft were destroyed and 40 were damaged. The ship suffered over $72 million in damage. In 1967 dollars. The Forrestal fire changed the United States Navy. Before that day, firefighting training was primarily the responsibility of specialized damage control teams. After Forrestal, the Navy mandated that every crew member, every sailor aboard a carrier, regardless of rate or rank, would receive comprehensive firefighting training. The logic was brutal and simple. If the trained team dies in the first 90 seconds, everyone else must be able to fight the fire. Munitions handling procedures were rewritten. Aircraft positioning protocols were redesigned. Fuel management systems were overhauled. The lessons of Forrestal are built into every procedure, every drill, and every safety brief that happens on a carrier flight deck today. 134 sailors died to teach the Navy that the most dangerous place on a warship is not below the waterline. It is on the flight deck. And the only defense is training, discipline, and a culture where every person accepts responsibility for the safety of every other person. Here is what most people miss about the flight deck. They see the technology, the catapults, the arresting gear, the radar, the combat systems, and they assume that the flight deck works because of engineering. It does not. The flight deck works because of trust. Trust that the yellow shirt directing your aircraft sees the obstacle you cannot see. Trust that the green shirt operating the catapult has calibrated it correctly for your aircraft's weight. Trust that the red shirt who loaded the weapon on your wing did it by the procedure. Trust that the purple shirt who fueled your aircraft sealed the connection. Trust that the blue shirt who chained the aircraft next to yours did not miss a chain. Trust that the brown shirt who inspected your aircraft found every fault. Trust that the sailor next to you picked up the bolt during the FOD walkdown that would have destroyed your engine. None of these people know each other's names during flight operations. They know colors, they know hand signals, they know procedures, and they trust, absolutely, completely, without hesitation, that every other color on the deck is doing their job correctly. Because if even one color fails, the system fails. And on a flight deck, system failure does not mean a delay. It means fire. It means injury. It means death. That is the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, not a machine. A culture built on trust, discipline, and the lessons of the sailors who did not come home from the Forrestal. If you think that story matters, consider subscribing. We cover the people who make the weapons work, the ones whose names are not painted on the aircraft but without whom no aircraft flies. Drop a comment and tell us. Which detail surprised you most? The cable that carries 50,000 pounds of tension and is handled by a sprinting sailor? The FOD walkdown, where hundreds of people pick up bolts that could destroy engines? The Forrestal fire that killed 134 and changed every safety procedure in the Navy? Or the fact that the average age on the most dangerous workplace in the world is 20? And a question for our next video. You have seen the people who work on the flight deck, but who controls them? There is a room below the flight deck where a single officer stares at a scale model of the deck and moves aircraft like chess pieces. The handler, the person responsible for the position of every aircraft on the ship. One mistake, and the entire air operation stops. That story is coming next.